Welcome to Financial Wellness 101. My name is Rocky Pratt, financial planner with GBS Retire. Our goal, our main mission here at GBS Retire is to help as many individuals as we can on their journey to retirement so that you can live the lifestyle that you want now and be able to retire and enjoy your lifestyle in retirement as well. Now, a big part of that is looking back to your current financial situation and creating a solid foundation so that you can build your financial skyscraper, so to speak, on a solid foundation. So it's always a good idea to look back to the basics to make sure that you are financially healthy in your habits, in your behaviors on a day-to-day basis. That's going to be the premise of this presentation today. Financial Wellness 101, we go back to the basics, talking about money, creating a budget, credit versus debt, and ultimately leaving you with some items to help you create financial momentum. So I'm going to start with money, specifically how money has nothing to do with money. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is money isn't about math or numbers. It's all about behavior. Our financial life will be good or bad based on the choices that we make, not on how much money we make. Right? We all know those people that make two, three, four, $500,000 a year, millions of dollars a year, and still live paycheck to paycheck. Right? A lot of people think they just need an extra 20,000 a year or they need an extra 10,000 a year in order to get by. But when they get that extra amount, it just goes towards buying something else. Right? Think of the celebrities that we all know. MC Hammer, 50 Cent, Mike Tyson. There's been a lot of athletes, celebrities that have made millions and millions of dollars a year for a number of years and end up a few years later having to declare bankruptcy. Right? MC Hammer was a great example where he had $70 million to his name. $70 million, which is more than most of us will ever earn or see in a lifetime. Just a few short years later, he was declaring bankruptcy because he spent it all. He spent it all on a marble house, which he was then unable to pay for. It's not about how much money we make. It's about what we do with the money that we make. On the flip side of that example, we know of some individuals that have never made a dollar over $50,000 a year. Throughout their whole career, they never made more than $50,000 a year. And they were able to retire a millionaire and enjoy a comfortable retirement. It's all about your behaviors and what you do with the money that we make. I want you to think about your number one financial priority. What is your number one financial priority today? Everyone's going to be different. Could be paying for a house, paying off your house, paying for a wedding, purchasing a car, maybe paying for school, paying for kids' education, a lot of different goals that you could have. What is your number one financial priority today? Now think about what percentage of your monthly budget goes towards this goal. So how much are you saving each month for your number one financial priority? This will help us to see if our actions follow our financial priorities, right? Do we follow through from a behavior standpoint on the things that we identify as being important? On average, and this is our experience, only 3% of our monthly budget goes towards our financial priorities. On average, obviously, some people are going to save more for those financial priorities, some less. But what does this cause? Frustration, right? If we're only contributing or only saving 3%, 4%, a small amount to our number one financial priority, that's just going to cause frustration and stress because we're not going to be making the steps necessary to accomplish those financial priorities. Right, we need to make sure that our actions follow what we identify as important, or else we're never going to get there. Let's talk about resources real quick. I'm going to use an example with one of my favorite resources, right? All of our favorite resources, toilet paper. Let's imagine we're going into a bathroom. We see there's a full roll of toilet paper. Charmin, Ultra Soft, Ultra Strong, whatever is your favorite there. We go crazy, right? We're able to go 5, 10, 15 ply deep because we can, and we're at very low risk of running out. Now let's think on the flip side, if you go into the bathroom and you can see the cardboard through the paper, you're instantly going to act differently, right? We're going to be extremely careful because we're closer to running out of the resources that we have. We instantly act differently because we're more resourceful with less resources. When we're presented with more resources, we make bad decisions. And we see this in our financial life as well, where we make the worst decisions on payday and the best decisions the day before payday. It's all about behavior and what we do with the money that we have. I want to encourage you to go through a quick example over the next 7 days, where we're going to count how many times we're spending over the next 7 days. And what this will do, as you go through this, you'll see that it'll help you to understand a little bit more about your behavior as it relates to your financial decisions. Right, budgeting has changed drastically over the last few decades with use of budgeting apps, debit cards, credit cards, online banking. In a recent study, it showed that on average, an American spends around 22 times per week, swiping their cards 22 times a week. Now, obviously, we have to spend a little bit. We have to spend a little bit each day typically, but 22 times a week does not include bills, just transactions. Okay, so some that are important, like getting gas, getting groceries, others that aren't quite as important, such as entertainment, getting your morning Starbucks or going to McDonald's, what have you. But what it found is that the more people spend in a week, the more times they're swiping, the less they care about the cost of each purchase. And the less you spend in a week, the more you're aware of what you're spending on and how much it's costing you. Like I said, you have to spend a little bit. We have to spend money. That's just the way it is. But the proper amount, it's going to differ and depend based on your situation, but try and get that down to about 10 to 15 times per week, right? As an example, if you go to McDonald's for breakfast every morning, spending money 5 times a week, it's getting more and more expensive nowadays to go to McDonald's. Let's compare that to just once a week. You go to the store on Saturday, you purchase a similar sausage, egg, and cheese sandwich, and then you have that throughout the whole week because you purchased it in bulk from the store, right? That's a way, just an extreme example of going from 5 times a week down to 1 time a week and saving money that way. But I would encourage you all to count how many times you're spending over the next 7 days. It'll help you to see, like I said, how much you're spending, what you're spending it on, and if it's really important and helping you to accomplish those financial priorities. Quick quiz question here. What do you think is the percentage of people that have clear financial goals for the next 5 years? This study was mostly done on millennials. So for millennials, how many of them do you think have clear financial goals for the next 5 years? I was a little surprised by this. D is the correct answer. In this study, 62% of millennials had clear financial goals for the next 5 years. They did it for Gen Z, the Gen Z generation as well. It was less at 54%. So what it shows us is as we go throughout our careers, we go throughout our lives, we get a little bit more realistic on what's possible and what we want out of our financial life. But this number right here should be 100%. We should all have clear financial goals for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 plus years. Because if we don't have those financial goals, we're not going to have anything to be shooting for, reaching for, and to track to see if we're on track for what we really want. So the next thing I would encourage you all to do is to document your goals. Write down your goals. If you're in a relationship, make sure that you're doing this together with your partner or spouse to make sure you're on the same page, or at least understanding what each other's goals are. But make sure you're documenting your goals, writing them down, keeping them in front of you, making sure you're referring back to them frequently. If you don't know what your goals are, your financial priorities are, how are you going to know if your behaviors align with those priorities? So document your goals on a short-term, mid-term, long-term basis. You can see examples there. If you don't have an emergency fund, and I'll talk about this again here in a minute, but that should be your first priority, to build an emergency fund. And that'll also help you pay off debt, prevent you from going further into debt, so you can actually focus on some of these other goals as well. But make sure you have these goals written down. A lot of what we do is retirement focused, helping people get to retirement and then transition in retirement. So I want to take a minute or two just to talk about retirement really quick, because gone are the days where if you've seen your parents or your grandparents' retirement, where they had that three-legged stool, where they had Social Security, a pension, and then their personal savings to cover their retirement income. Right, Social Security, we won't talk too much about that, but there's going to be some change around Social Security, right? It's not sustainable at the current rate. Pensions are all but non-existent, especially in the private sector. So more and more of the responsibility for retirement income is falling to our personal savings to cover that retirement income. So we have to have our retirement goal, both when we're wanting to retire and how much we're going to need in retirement, as an important priority there that we need to be planning for all along the way. So definitely don't forget about that, because more and more of that responsibility is falling to us to provide for that priority. I want to take a couple minutes to talk about budgeting, because that is a huge key as well. If we're not able to get our current financial budget in order, we're not going to be able to allocate to our financial priorities. So our behaviors are going to reflect we're living in today, which is fine, but we also need some behaviors to reflect that we're preparing for the future, because we all have future financial goals and priorities. If you don't care what happens in the future, if you don't care if you're living off of Social Security, whatever that is in the future, that's okay. You probably don't need to budget in that case, right? But most of us, I would say 99%, 100% of us probably do have some sort of goals, some sort of dreams for the future that we want. Budgeting is a huge key into helping us accomplish that. So I want to go through a few different points to help you be successful at a budget, because we know what a budget is, right? What's coming in, what's going out, making sure that we're not sending out more money than we're bringing in. But a lot of us have had struggles being consistent with our budgets, right? Which I completely understand. I've been there. It can be difficult to stay consistent with your budget. So a few different keys. Awareness is the first one. Obviously, you need to be aware of what's coming in, but you need to be aware of what's going out. So I'd encourage you to look over the last few months, maybe take 3 months and see exactly where your money is going. Obviously, there's going to be things where you need to send money to, you need to pay for the house, if it's a mortgage or rent, you need to pay for food, gas, utilities. There's things that we need to pay for, other things that are more discretionary, that are optional expenses, that we need those as well at times, but we need to keep those in moderation. So it's important to look back and see, become aware with where money is going and if there are any leaks where it's going out unnecessarily. The next key is communication. This is especially important if you're in a relationship. Oftentimes, the most stressful aspect of any relationship is money, right? So I would encourage you all, if you are in a relationship, to every once in a while, maybe once a month, once a quarter, depending on how often you feel comfortable doing this, meet with your partner or spouse and get on the same page with your budget, making sure you're both aware of where money has been going and make sure you're both aware of your goals for the next month or quarter so that you're on the same page. All right, it really takes proactive planning to make these discussions successful. So I'd encourage you all to have a date. Maybe it's the first of the month or the last Friday or Saturday of the month, whenever that is. Have a specific date that you get together, you meet, go through the budget, make sure you're still on the same page and know what's going to happen over the next couple months, because the budget is forward looking, right? Yes, we evaluate how it went in the past, but it's planning for the future, planning for the next month or quarter to make sure that your behavior is in line with your financial priorities. The next thing is accountability. This is a big one as well. For most of us, our goals are going to help keep us accountable to our budget. If that's not the case, and if that's not working for you, maybe you need to reevaluate your goals to make sure that they're motivating you enough to help you be accountable to yourself to follow a budget. Obviously, if you're in a relationship, your partner will be an accountability partner for you. But if you're not, I would encourage you to get a friend, family member, trusted individual that you can have help you be accountable to your goals, and you can be accountable to them as well. Quick example budget here that I want to go through really quickly, because this isn't the ideal budget. The ideal budget is going to vary based on your situation, right? All these numbers can change based on your priorities. But here's an example that I want to go through. It does a good job of certain areas as well. Your eyes may be drawn to this first one here, the largest section of the budget, housing. Yes, I get it can be hard to keep housing down to a reasonable percentage within the budget nowadays. But it's important to keep it reasonably so you don't lock yourself into, say, a 30-year mortgage with 50% of your take-home pay going to pay that mortgage. Okay. Housing is a big one that you want to keep relatively low. I would say anywhere from 25 to 35% of your take-home pay. No more than that should be going to housing because it'll strain you in the other areas of your budget as well. This one, this savings, this is meant for those short-term savings. Ideally, your retirement savings will be taken out before you get your take-home pay. This savings is the first one to go if your housing or your car payment, your transportation budget is too much. Saving that short-term savings is typically the first to go, but you want to make sure there is some savings for short-term and mid-term goals built into the budget so you can make sure those are taken care of as well. And I always encourage folks to automate that. So if you have, say, $200 a month going to another account to save for a car down payment or a car purchase when your car breaks down, have that automated, go out the first of the month or whenever, as soon as you get paid, so it goes in there without you having to even think about it. Automation there really does wonders. You can see the other areas, charity, entertainment, clothing, those will all vary based on how much you need in those categories. But I'd also like to point out this miscellaneous section here. I would encourage you all to have a little bit, a certain percentage of the budget each month that you can spend on whatever you want, spend on yourself without having to feel bad about it, right? For my wife and I, that's a huge key to help us stay consistent with our budget. We each have a little bit each month that we can spend on ourselves, whatever we want, judgment free from the other. I'll be honest, there's judgment at times, but it's all in good fun. Just an important tip there to help keep you consistent. What you'll also notice as you go through your budget is you have discretionary and we call non-discretionary expenses. So discretionary obviously is more optional spending, entertainment, some clothing purchases, dining, right? Dining out obviously is going to be a discretionary expense, and the non-discretionary expenses, groceries, gas, utilities, housing payment are going to be your non-discretionary expenses. I'll come back to this when we talk about our emergency fund as well, but it's important to keep an eye and remember about that. The importance of the budget and the key of the budget is to determine how much water is left at the end of the month, right? What's coming in versus what's going out. Now, if you have more going out than what's coming in, we have a shortage, right? And we'll be, if we don't have any savings, we'll be going further and further into debt, kicking the shortage down the road each month, which we don't want. If you have money left over at the end of the month, if you have some water left over, that's great, but don't get too excited, right? We want to make sure that that's properly allocated. So as my good friend Dave Ramsey says, every dollar should have a purpose. Every dollar should have somewhere to go that's been planned, pre-planned for. It doesn't all have to go to savings if there's extra, but at least strategically allocate that based on your goals and your priorities. If there is a shortage, typically it just means there's water's leaking from somewhere, right? It's leaking from somewhere unnecessarily. You have a few too many subscriptions, going out to eat too much, whatever that is, evaluate your budget. If you have a shortage, find some ways that you can tape that up and allocate those funds to your priorities. A few minutes on emergency savings here. I recommended earlier that if you don't have an emergency fund, that should be your first priority. But how much do we recommend to have for an emergency fund? I would say for most of you, 3 to 6 months. And again, this is where we come back to the non-discretionary. So 3 to 6 months of non-discretionary expenses saved in a highly liquid, accessible savings account. Now, if your income is a little bit more unstable, so for example, if you're commission-based, or let's say you're in a highly specialized field, where if you were to lose your job, it may take a few more months for you to find a new one. You want to pad a little bit more, 6 to 12 months of those non-discretionary expenses. Now, obviously, if you want to include discretionary expenses in there, you can, totally up to you and what you feel comfortable. But for the most part, we don't recommend having more than 12 months of expenses saved in a savings account, because at that point, you're just missing out on potential returns if you were to invest those. So 3 to 6 months for most of you, 6 to 12 months if you have commission income or are in a highly specialized field. Make sure you take care of this first. If you don't have anything saved, start with just $1,000. Start with saving just $1,000, and then you can work that up, build on it slowly till you're up within these recommended guidelines. Emergency savings are for those smaller emergencies that come up, but that you can still reasonably plan for and pay for. As an example, when my wife and I first moved into our house, a couple months later, our furnace went out. Big surprise, middle of winter, furnace goes out, wake up and it's really cold. We have to shell out a few $1,000s to buy a new one. If we didn't have an emergency fund, we would have had to put that on a credit card and go into debt for that. So emergency funds are for those smaller emergencies that we can properly cover ourselves. For those larger emergencies, things that could cause catastrophic losses, for example, a house fire, or oftentimes going to the hospital for certain injuries or illnesses. If we don't have insurance for that, that could derail our entire financial future. So make sure you're properly protected from an insurance standpoint with car insurance, health insurance, home or renter's insurance, and then life insurance. On this one, if anyone is dependent on your income, it's recommended to have about 10 times the dependent income in term life insurance. So just pure, simple term life insurance to cover that. If you were to pass away, whoever is dependent on your income would be able to maintain their standard of living. Moving on here, I want to touch on debt and credit here for a couple minutes, because that often is the number one stressor of finances in a lot of our lives. Student loan debt, there's been a lot of talk about student loan debt recently, so I want to take a couple minutes on that, because a lot of people are talking about that. So quick quiz here for student loan debt. What do you think is the average undergraduate student loan debt in 2022? So we got these numbers last year, looking at 2022. For those that graduated with debt, what is the average amount? If you guessed B, that is correct. About $37,300 for those graduating with student loans, how much debt they had. That is a lot of money. Now, if it went to pay for a degree or an education that would increase your income to help you pay it back, then that's worthwhile, right? Unfortunately, sometimes there are degrees that folks go into a lot of debt for that don't get them into a high-paying position to be able to pay that back very quickly, and it drags it out and becomes a detriment to their financial situation. So be very careful with student loan debt as well. If you do have student loan debt, that's fine. A lot of people do. As we see, 70% of those who graduate with college do. I would just recommend to get aggressive with your student loan debt. Treat it like any other debt that you have. Get aggressive and pay it down. Don't just go with the payment from the bank, because they're wanting to stretch that out and get that interest as long as possible. So get aggressive, pay it down as much as you can. Treat it like all of your other debt as much as you can. Realities of debt, I just want to go through a few different things here. Obviously, people use debt because they can't afford to pay cash. Obviously, if we could pay cash for everything, we wouldn't need debt. But more and more, it's more and more common in today's society to buy things with debt. You go down to the furniture store or Best Buy, and they're always wanting to sell you on their credit card to get 0% interest for a certain amount of time. Really few items should be purchased this way. There's only a few examples of good debt, such as a mortgage on a house, a student loan debt that will pay itself back over an increased salary throughout your career. Car loans, at times, if they're less than 5 years, can be considered good debt as well. Business loan, if it's going to provide a return, can be good debt as well. Other than that, most of the time it's going to be what we call bad debt, unacceptable debt, which just helps you go down further into that rabbit hole, which is very hard to get out of. Even medical bills, you see there, stem from a lack of preparedness and can cause future credit strife. What I mean by that is medical bills can very quickly go to collections. And if they're not paid, they go to collections. They can be a huge red mark on your credit score and can be difficult to remove. Lack of preparedness, what I mean by that is medical bills are often the easiest to negotiate. There's a website, a resource called healthcarebluebook.com. That's healthcarebluebook.com, where you can go and search for a certain procedure at different providers in your area. Then you can see how much they'll cost at different providers, go to your preferred provider, your in-network provider, and kind of negotiate that cost potentially. When you do have medical bills, make sure you get them paid off very quickly. Lastly, stop thinking of credit as a way to give you things you can't afford. It really does prevent you from living the life that you want down the road. Right? It's the whole concept of keeping up with the Joneses today, and it puts you into a tight spot down the road. Whereas if, like Dave Ramsey said, referring back to him, live like no one else today, so live below your means today so that later you can live and give and do the things that you really want in the future. I want to touch on credit really quick because credit and debt do go hand in hand. I would recommend every one of you get a free credit report at least once a year. So you see this website, annualcreditreport.com. It's the only source for free credit reports authorized by federal law. You can go there and request a credit report from any one of the three reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. Go on and get a credit report, but what you'll notice about the report is that the credit score is not the main focus of the report. It's actually the report itself and what's on the report that's important. So what is on the credit report? When you get the credit report, you'll see a few different things. I'll go through them really quickly. The total number of accounts, open accounts, obviously this is important. Closed accounts as well. You'll be able to see the total number of accounts that you have open and closed. Let's imagine you go in there and you see an account that you've never heard of. You have no idea it's got $5,000 of debt on that. Say it's a credit card. You had no idea. You now know about it. You can go and get that taken care of. If it was fraudulent, whatnot, you can take care of that because you actually know about it. So it's important to know what accounts you have in your name that are open. Yes, it is a good idea to close accounts if you're not using them, but it's a good idea to keep an eye on that. You'll also be able to see if you are delinquent in any of your payments. About 35% of your credit score is based on whether you pay on time or not. So obviously that is an important thing to keep an eye on. Derogatory just refers to any foreclosures, anything that's gone to collections, etc. Balances, I'll touch on that in a minute as well, but you can see the balances on all the different accounts, recent payments that have been made, and then public inquiries. If someone makes an inquiry into your credit, you'll be able to see that as well. Keep an eye on that. So it's really important to mostly to see into your credit to make sure that no one has opened any accounts under your name. Also, what you can do, and what I would recommend to all of you as well, is to freeze your credit. If you didn't know that, you can actually go on to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion and freeze your credit with all three of them. It's a free service. They have to offer it. You can freeze your credit. What that does is nobody can go in and access your credit report, not even you, if it's frozen. So what you need to do is if you were to apply for a loan, you have to go in and unfreeze that, apply for the loan, and then refreeze it. But it just adds another level of security around your credit so nobody can open up a credit card under your name, for example. Now, credit score, while it is important, I wouldn't recommend focusing on it too much, right? Because it only analyzes one part of your financial life, and that's how good you are at managing debt. But it is a good idea to keep an eye on your credit score, try and increase that as you go. So there's a couple of secrets to good credit. One credit card is typically all you need, right? We get pushback on this sometimes, but for the most part, just pick one card. The one that you've had the longest is typically the best. Keep your credit utilization ratio down. And that means, so for example, if we're talking about a credit card that has $10,000 of credit, your credit utilization ratio is how much you use of that month to month. So if you have $2,000 on your statement, that means your credit utilization ratio is at 20%. A big pet peeve of mine about credit scores is that if you pay off your balance before the end of the month, before the statement ends, according to the credit reporting agencies, that's going to show up as a 0% credit utilization, which is actually a negative on your credit report. The ideal amount is between 1 and 35%. So what that means is actually better to have some debt, according to the credit reporting agencies, than to not be utilizing it at all. But anything above 50% in terms of credit utilization ratio pretty significantly hurts your score. So try and keep it below 35% and really pay that off after each statement cycle. Paying on time, it's as simple as that. Like I said, about another 35% of your score is based on whether you pay on time. Not a big fan of store cards. They just lead you to get into more debt, spend more at the store that you may not otherwise anyway. And the ultimate goal is to not care about your credit, right? If we just had the amount of cash to buy everything with cash and without having to go into debt, that's the ultimate goal. But we get there are some things where credit can be helpful to help reduce the interest that you pay over a mortgage or a car loan, for example. Ultimately, if you have good financial habits, your credit score will follow and increase over time. So for those of us that do have debt, most of us nowadays do have debt. I would encourage you all to get aggressive and pay that off. There's three main strategies that we like to use to help pay down that debt. Two of them work, one of them doesn't. And then one of these is the best, and I'll show you which one. These two that work are the math method and the momentum method. Math is sometimes also called the interest rate approach, and momentum is sometimes called the snowball. If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, he swears by the snowball approach. With the math method, you line all your debts up by interest rate, and you attack the highest interest rate debt with everything that you can. What that does is it'll help you pay the least amount of interest as you're paying down your debts. What it doesn't do is it doesn't help you to be motivated, which that's where the momentum or snowball approach comes in, where you line up all of your debts based on balance and you attack the smallest balance debt with everything you can. Once that's paid off, you then roll all that payment into the next, so on and so forth, that by the time that you're attacking your largest debt, you have a much bigger payment to be able to do so, and it goes down much quicker. It helps to keep you motivated. Both of these work. So find one that works for you. Try one. If you find yourself, you're doing the interest rate method, the math method, and you're not being motivated, you're not being consistent, just switch to the other one. That's just fine. Pick one that works for you and be consistent. Consistency is the key here when chipping away at your debt. The last one is a shotgun approach, and I wanted to include this because it often is the most common, but is the least effective. And that's where you send an extra $100, an extra $50, an extra $25 to all of your different debts. You don't really have a strategy that you're consistent with, and you don't really make a lot of progress. So don't do that. Have a solid strategy that you're able to be consistent with and get that debt paid down. Lastly, I want to leave you with a quick exercise you can run through to help create financial momentum. 10 steps here that I encourage you all to go through on your own time. Grab everything. Grab all of your different statements, different accounts, debts. Step up on the scale. You have to be honest with yourself, right? If we're trying to lose weight, we have to be honest with where we are today in order to get to where we want to be. Recruit an accountability partner. If you're not in a relationship, you don't have a partner or a spouse, recruit someone's trusted family member or friend who can help you be accountable to your goals. And then set short and measurable goals, right? We have these big goals. We want to retire at 60 with X amount of income per year. That's great, but we need to set short and measurable goals today that we can accomplish to make sure that we're on track for that larger goal. This is a big one here. Step 5 is eliminate negativity. Negativity should have no place in any one of your financial plans because you can all accomplish the goals that you want with the proper planning, with patience and consistency. Step 6 is start counting. Like we mentioned before, over the next 7 days, start counting how you're spending and where you're spending and how much you're spending within those purchases. That'll help to switch your behavior, change your behavior to line up with your financial priorities. 7 is to examine your plans. There's a lot of different plans that we have nowadays. This is referring to those subscriptions, recurring payments that a lot of us have nowadays. It's really easy to add on more and more. Examine those plans, see which ones you actually need and which ones maybe overlap and can be eliminated. Money reconnaissance. This is an interesting one because sometimes we'll have money at the state that we don't even know about. I live in Utah, for example. Utah has an unclaimed money website, an unclaimed money resource online. Type in Utah unclaimed money website. It'll come up with that. You can actually search for your name and it'll show you if you have any money sitting with the state. I received a check from a company that said if this was not cashed in 60 days, we will send it to the state. Happens a lot of times. With old retirement plans, for example, if they cash it out and the check is never deposited, they will sometimes send it to the state. So look at that. If you have any money with the state, you can also search for your family members to see if they have any money. Sometimes there's a couple $100 there, which for some people can be a lot and a big help. Dig into your benefits book. Based on your employer, you may have some different benefits you can access to give substantial savings or discounts with certain purchases. Make sure you're aware of what those benefits are. And lastly, reward your progress. This is a big one here. As you hit those short and measurable goals, make sure you reward your progress to help you stay motivated, be consistent with your strategy. Now, if your goal is to save $1,000, maybe don't go spend 800 of that as your reward. Go out to a dinner or something, spend 20, $30 to reward yourself for meeting that goal. This will help you to create financial momentum, to build a bit more solid of a foundation, and then you can move on to some of those bigger steps, saving, investing, etc., to work towards those financial goals. Because really a little bit now could do a lot for your future. Even a small change in your behavior can, 20, 40 years down the road be the difference between accomplishing your goals and not. Literally $50 a month saved now could be $500 a month of income throughout retirement. So it's over a 10x your money, just like that. In this example, it's over 30 years, but just a little bit now can do wonders over the long term. Now, lastly, with GBS Retire, we're a full service financial services firm. I'm the financial planner. We do more comprehensive financial planning. If you want to go more in depth about your situation, we can talk about how much you should be saving, where you should be saving, budgeting, different types of investments as well. We have different financial planning tools. You can scan that QR code, set up a consultation, no cost consultation, obviously, with myself, one of our other team members here at GBS Retire, and we can talk through any questions that you have as well. If you do have questions from the presentation today, this is my direct email and phone number. You're welcome to reach out with any questions about budgeting, debt, investments, savings, what have you. More than happy to be a resource for you. Again, GBS Retire, I'm the financial planner. Thank you for your time.